So before we get started, I just want to put this at the start of the video so none of you click away after a rating and don't see all the important stuff at the end. Down in the description, I'm going to post several links to a lot of important funds that you can use to stand in solidarity with the Black community and all the people who are out protesting on the streets right now. There are several funds you could donate to, from Black Lives Matter to any of the litany of city bail funds that are being used to help the people who are being wrongfully imprisoned. This isn't the time for passivity, this is the time for activism. Donate if you can. I would really appreciate that. I'm not going to be posting anything to my Patreon this week because, quite frankly, I feel like it would be in poor taste. This is not about me. If you're not able to donate, there's still plenty of things that you can do. Educate yourselves, have difficult conversations with friends and family that explain why this is so important and help them understand. Be self-critical to any of the ways that you yourself are helping contribute to systemic racism. We all do it. Do not let the conversation die just because the cops in Minneapolis were arrested. There's still a lot of work to be done. And if you're being silent or thinking that this doesn't apply to you, then you're complicit. We all need to be together on this and stand up for what's right. And this country won't stand for anything unless it stands for all of its citizens, Black people included. Black Lives Matter. So now that all that's out of the way, let's talk about some stuff. So a few days ago, I watched a movie called Body Cam starring Mary J. Blige and Nat Wolff, and they play cops. And it's a weirdly prophetic movie that came out at a spooky accurate time, and quite frankly it wasn't very good. It took this weird violence on both sides stance that feels incredibly tone deaf right now, and I really wouldn't recommend you watch it unless you want to see a take that is sucking the dick of the system that supposedly works, even though it's clear out on the streets right now that it doesn't work. And y'all don't need to hear another white boy on YouTube talking about this shit, especially not shit that involves cops. So instead I'm going to take this video to recommend you check out some really excellent films by Black artists, or celebrating the Black community as a whole. First up, we got Tales from the Hood, directed by Rusty Kundieff, and it's just this delightfully fun 90s romp, Tales from the Crypt style, cautionary tales taking place in a low-income Black community. And it's centered on a lot of major issues that are really important to discuss, from domestic violence, to white supremacy, to police brutality, but it's all done through this crazy, kooky 90s anthology film, full of a lot of heart and some really great practical effects. Rusty Kundieff does a great job with this, and I would highly recommend it. Next up, we got Blackula, a film by William Crane. It's from the Blaxploitation era, and it came at a time where there weren't a lot of Black voices in the director's seat, but William Crane, in spite of that, and in spite of budgetary restraints, got this movie made, and got it made in a way that it discusses a lot of systemic and social issues, and does them in a really cool, inventive way, and it makes some strong statements and delivers some really memorable moments in dialogue. Of course, we can't talk about Black horror without talking about Jordan Peele and Get Out, a film that celebrates Blackness and talks about systemic racism in a way that had never really been done before, in a wholly original way. It's beautifully written, it's scary, it's funny, and it discusses the kind of racism that is a lot more prevalent in today's society, the kind of racism that doesn't think it's racism because it's done in support of Black people, but it's still ultimately treating them differently. If you're a fan of gross out, weird body horror, I would highly recommend the Shudder exclusive Kuso by Steve Ellison, or as some of you may know him, Flying Lotus. This is a head trip of a film. It's heavily centered in Black and brown communities, and it explores a lot of the major systemic issues surrounding that life, but it does it in this absolutely surreal, very gooey manner that makes the most of both Flying Lotus and David Firth's humor. And finally, this list would not be complete without a discussion of Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror, which is a documentary that I have already reviewed on this channel. Directed by Xavier Bergen, this is an in-depth look into the horror scene as a whole and how it relates to Black people. It goes far more in-depth into the things that I'm discussing here, and it's one of the most insightful, good documentaries I've ever seen. It really is important to everything that's going on, and it helps contextualize the horror genre to an entire group of people whose viewpoint you're outside of, and it really helps you get in that mindset. Honestly, I would say watch this film before you watch the others because it discusses a lot of really important shit that will make you view those other films differently and maybe give you a bigger appreciation for them. A quick few other recommendations for horror films that are not directed by Black people, but are heavily centric in the Black community and still very culturally important to the Black community. Candyman, which I'm going to talk more about in September leading up to Nia DaCosta's remake. The People Under the Stairs, a movie starring a young Black boy with a heavy racial tension premise centered in a small suburban community. And of course, Night of the Living Dead, which was the first real instance of a normal Black man being portrayed as the hero without falling into any of the pre-existing racial stereotypes that were prevalent at the time. These are just a few movies that you can check out. There are so many more, and I would highly urge you to go look into as many lists as you can celebrating Black artists. Go watch their films. There's some really, really, really incredible content out there. I urge you to check it out. Please educate yourselves. Please explore all different facets of art. It's very important at this time not only to stand in solidarity with the Black community and support Black artists, but also to really immerse yourself in their works, in their culture, and understand the racial struggles that have been prevalent in this country since its inception. And once again, before I sign off, I do want to tell you, please take a look at the links I'm posting in the description. Please donate. It is a very, very, very important time. Don't be on the wrong side of things. If you can't donate, share it around, spread awareness. Just stand in solidarity with all the people out there who are fighting on the streets. It is very important, especially if you're a white person. Now is the time to take your privilege and utilize it and weaponize it and do some good with it. This is the time that people are going to look back on and ask you what you did. Don't say nothing. See y'all soon, guys.